Right. So yeah,
It's recording, right?
Yeah, we're recording now, and so this is a great place to start.
So the problem I had was so I was just I haven't played with GraphQL before. I'm doing the GraphQL thing for the first time here. So I was going through the template you guys made, like James, you made. So I looked at this template and I thought for every query, you can give where and you can go through each one of these and find the things you want. So that was my idea. So in transactions, you can put where, then outputs tokens. So I went to this page and I completely ignored this part. So that was the problem I had. So I directly went through here. So query, and what I was trying to do was I had my chili tokens, so I was going to retrieve every address that has the chili token. So what I want is address. So I looked at this query and went through it, and I saw the payment address. So then I tried to navigate through it. I query the payment address, and okay, and I tried to query the payment address, and I wrote payment address where, and then summary, then asset balance, and then went through like this assets, and then I went to the fingerprint. So I tried to get the assets, and I thought it will retrieve me the addresses that has that asset. The thing I didn't knew at that time was not every query has like in transactions, we have this where, and then from where we can go through the ones I just said, like, and then assets, tokens, and such things. So I didn't know that the payment address does not have that where argument. So that was the problem I was facing. And then in a hurry, or maybe just because of the I don't know, the mood there, I maybe bet enough to try other things, and I didn't figure out what was wrong with it until I looked at this bar after Saurabh sent the link, and I got it figured. So I tried. What I have done now is, instead of this payment address, I queried the UTXO, the UTXOs. And fortunately for the UTXO, we have where, and this is what I did. I queried the UTXO, and from there, where tokens, asset, and the fingerprint, and the chili tokens fingerprint. So I retrieve all of the UTXOs from this, and then I displayed it in the front end. So this here, I have fetched each UTXO that has the chili token and grab their addresses and the amount of tokens that has in that UTXO. So you can see the quantity and the address. So the other thing that I have to do now is that since I'm grabbing the UTXO instead of the addresses that holds the token, I have the same address again and again, because this address holds 3 UTXO that contains that has the chili tokens. So I have to find a way in front end to look through this query and then make a list somehow. and then merge these addresses and sum these quantities for the same address. So this is what I have been able to do till now. And okay, so initially I thought I was going to be able to grab the addresses directly by going through what I just showed you before. And yeah, that's what I have been able to achieve thus far. So if
Congrats,
think,
man.
guys?
This is awesome. Really good work. And great explanation of your journey, figuring stuff out there. Who's got questions?
Yeah, so for me, some of my biggest stuff comes from I'm still very new to JavaScript, but I understand kind of some of the calls to GraphQL a little bit better because I'm very familiar with working with APIs. But it's so different that I struggle a little bit. So if you could, real quick, you mentioned the when you went to try with addresses initially, that they didn't have the where function capable. Is that right? It's like a property of the query you're trying to make.
Yes. So when we see these other ones, we can see this where as an argument to the function we're trying to fetch. So so now what I haven't tried is I haven't tried querying this, and I haven't been able to do it properly. Like I have tried it a couple of rounds and it didn't work for me. So
okay, I think I follow. So then, general question. I see what you're saying there, where there's those different functions that you can, or arguments you can pass based on what call you're making. Most of that looks pretty intuitive, but are those in the GraphQL documentation explained on their own? So, for example, redeemers I see has offset. Is there somewhere in this documentation that I could look and see what offset refers to?
I think you can go from here, and in offset, you just have to give an integer to it, right?
Got it.
Otherwise, if you want to go to order by, then you can click here and it will show what type of object or parameters you have to fill in after that. So redeemer order by, you have to, and then next you can go like this. Yes. It's amazing. Yeah.
That's definitely a first in the way that I've seen this format for documentation. So, but yeah, that's very cool. Thanks.
So James, who defines these properties, limit, order by, offset? I think the GraphQL sets up on DBSync, and this is a DB, or not? Isn't it?
Right. So GraphQL as a language exposes each of these options. I'm not sure. It's the developers of the Cardano GraphQL, I guess, who choose which can be used on a given field.
Okay.
But I'm sure there are like formal, like technical limitations to that too.
Okay.
Just a few notes. Trevor was just noticing the offset. That has to do with pagination, right? So if you queried metadata key 721, you wouldn't want to grab that all at once, right? Because there's a million NFTs or whatever. So in any case where there's a large data set, pagination is built in, and offset is one of the tools we have to kind of allow a query to deliver, a set at a time, which is a very good exploration for people who are already starting to understand the basics here. It's worth noting, I think, also related to Trevor, what you were just saying, GraphQL is unique, and it fits beautifully into the strongly typed nature of Haskell, right? Where we have to declare our types before we even start, and the strongly typed nature of TypeScript, where you build data objects and you're only able to compile code that meets those qualities that you set up for yourself. So this is another one where the rules are written right here. They're easy to see. And one consequence, as you can see on Nelson's screen, is the autocomplete features are awesome. A lot of what you can do is you can get your bearings in that Voyager, that big map of everything that's possible. But then at every stage right here in the GraphQL Playground, and this, what's on Nelson's screen is not specific to Cardano. This is a feature of GraphQL in general, that you can set up a playground like this. You can just start typing and you can see what's possible at each stage in the same way that TypeScript works with VS Code, for example, or if you have a Haskell project set up properly, you're also going to be able to browse what's possible in the very same way. And I found that it required me to like just change. I had to change the order that I thought about things, if that makes sense. You know, like I think Plutus makes us change our approach from thinking about writing the rules first and then making things happen. TypeScript makes me think in a different order, and GraphQL does as well. Only get what you need.
Yeah,
so right
sure.
here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree. I was like, I'm not really from a programming background in general, but most of my experience is in Python, and going from that to things like Haskell it's very different.
Here's to finding that elegance together. I think there's a lot to discover here. So this error, right? And you get the type checking. I see the little red bars on the far left-hand side of Nelson's browser. And if you mouse over those, does it tell you? Yeah. Yep. And so this is what we could confirm if you go back to the Voyager and you look at payment address, what fields does it expose? Okay. Yeah. So this, right, addresses, and remember that this is going to be a array. If you look back at the Voyager one more time. So payment addresses, it's got addresses, which is actually an array of strings.
So James, can I do something like return every option that's possible here, like instead of writing something?
Yeah, and
okay,
let's see if we, just for fun, let's see if we can get this to work. In your playground, I think you'll eliminate the error on line 2 if you just wrap payment address. A capital P payment address is a string. And yes, we can see that summary. That's great. But going just back to the beginning, right? Addresses has to take an array. So on line 1, just wrap that yellow word string in square brackets with the exclamation point has to be outside, right? Because the entire type is the array. So that eliminates that error. Now you're still going to get an error here, I believe, right? And that's because at the bottom of the screen in the query variables, we have to make sure to wrap that value in square brackets as well. And let's see if this makes any difference.
I don't think it did.
That didn't make a difference yet. Cannot read property.
Okay, I think that's due to my address. Like I don't think it has any tokens. Maybe. Let's see. All right. Yes, that did it.
Nice. So I find that my typical workflow is I just try to get the query delivering me anything first. And so keep in mind, we've got two different things to pay attention to. On line 2, you've got what we're actually querying for inside of those parentheses. And then everything inside of the curly brackets that start on line 2 and end on line 6, that's the information we're getting back. And this is why, like, so Roberto, who runs Dandelion, he loves GraphQL because used well, it reduces the load dramatically on servers because people are only getting the information they need. So here, right, we're getting summary, which has a field called UTXOs count. Does that summary field have any other fields that we could query for?
We have asset balance. Yeah.
Should we try to do something with that?
So I think this is supposed to be a list, right?
Right. And show, just to show this, can you just press the play button now? Because we should get an error.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to read, this is a common error field. Asset balance has a selection of subfields, right? So obviously, if we don't ask for any of the subfields, it doesn't know what to do with that.
So I thought that was interesting. Maybe I missed exactly what happened here, but it looks like the original error was because the wallet didn't have any UTXOs to return. Is that right?
Yeah,
I think that you takes. Okay, go.
No, take it away.
I think that address has one UTXO though. Like I don't know why that happened.
Yeah, that was just interesting to me because it seems like, I mean, once again, very new to GraphQL, but I would expect, you know, for if you get an error message for it to be, you know, to return that it's empty, not just it didn't work. So that's interesting. It makes me wonder, like, or I guess makes me think that error handling with GraphQL is going to be extremely important. If the absence of something is going to throw an error rather than return 0 or null or something along those lines, then they're probably, you know, when writing these kind of things, putting in something along the lines of if 0 or if empty, you know, whatever it ends up being, you want to prevent it from throwing an error. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, can we recreate that? I don't think we fully got what we could out of that error. And maybe start by just dropping this address into the array of addresses in your query variables, just to show that this query can be used that way.
Oh, you want me to add this in the list like this?
Yeah. Yep. And then this should work, right? Because now we have quantity there. Cannot read property asset ID of null. Oh, go back to, so in Cardano scan, what do we see there? It has a token balance. Yeah, why are we getting that error? Oh, is this the one? Were there? Is this the wallet that held the tokens you minted that had a policy ID but no name?
Oh yes, but I think I have transferred that the one without the name. I have transferred it to another address, so it doesn't
Yeah.
hold any of those
They're
tokens.
not there. That's a weird one, actually.
Let me just run the Cardano node real quick, so we can see. Yes, this is the address. And we have 2 UTXOs.
And both of those have asset IDs. So what does that error say again? Let's figure this one out. And if you just delete lines 4 through 6 from the query for a moment, do we still get the exact same error? Yeah. Cannot read property asset ID of no. Is there anything else we can query from the payment address besides the summary?
I don't think there isn't. I don't think there is.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I have an older query
Yeah.
here in my GraphQL where the addresses is the variable that comes with the addresses has brackets for the list around it. So let me show you this. It's similar, I think. Put it in the chat. So here in the contract address, there were these brackets, and the contract address itself wasn't an array, but a string then.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yes,
the
right.
problem.
What's really confusing me here, Yuli, even in your query, we don't, oh, so that works with that address. Okay, so it is a problem in the summary of asset balances. But what's confusing me is I don't see asset ID anywhere. That's a few more layers down.
Yeah, I
Right,
was gonna say, it doesn't look like we're even querying for asset ID here. So I wonder if at some point it's pulling things that we didn't actually ask for, which makes me wonder if it could still be the presence of that nameless token, if it's pulling some kind of transaction history along with it.
Right, exactly. When it looks at those UTXOs, is it looking at the full transactions that produced those UTXOs? And maybe does Nelson still have one? So you've got, in this wallet, you've got these two UTXOs now. And both of these have valid asset names, it looks like to me. What's this one just has one now. Which one is that?
So can I ask a question?
Of course.
If this had at one point this nameless token, right, and he sent them out, then one of these UTXOs, I'm assuming probably that last one that doesn't contain any tokens, its transaction ID is 0. But for the same UTXO, somewhere in another wallet, there's a transaction ID of 1, maybe 2, so on and so forth, that do contain those tokens. And technically, they're on the same transaction. So if we're looking at UTXOs and it goes through transactions to find those UTXOs, wouldn't it find the transaction IDs that match up with that UTXO in other wallets at some point when it's looking?
Yeah, so I don't think that would be a problem because the address that worked, that has those assets. So I can show it to you.
Oh.
This should have that asset, which doesn't have the name. Right, here it is. Here it is. And if we just query that, that worked the first time, right? Yeah, it works.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah, you got me.
Well, it's a dangerous one, right? This is like not urgent to figure out. It will be really satisfying to figure it out, but it leads me to like worry that it's going to pop up at an inconvenient time, like 2 months from now. And yeah, to not have an answer for this one. Okay, but pinning that, let's go back to where Nelson finished off in that opening. Because Trevor, it sounds like this could be a useful exercise as well. And when it comes to just thinking of tasks we can ask learners to do, besides this one, I think what you were saying about using JavaScript to better summarize the results is a wonderful exercise. Does the task at hand make sense to everybody here?
Yeah.
Should we take a look?
I'm in.
So James, what do you want
So
me to?
you want to take us into the JavaScript code for this component?
This is basically it for now.
Excellent.
This is just something I just wanted to give this a little touch. So it's nothing fancy though. So it seems like much when you see it in the number of lines of code. So it's nothing.
That's great. That's great. And so we won't actually want to change this component too much. Basically, and so yes, we're talking JavaScript right now, but we're also talking a particular kind of JavaScript that's embedded in a React file, right? When we see the X, the TSX or the JSX, that's really, I forget what it's called, but it's it's the React way of combining JavaScript and HTML into one file. And so the work is going to happen outside of this return statement. And it's likely that how you process this data to make sure that each address is represented once and has a summary or a sum, sorry, of all the tokens at that address, that's likely to be a helpful little function that you write. So eventually you'd want to put it in a separate utility file and then import it to here. But for now, let's just write it above the chili holders function. We'll put it outside of this function up a little higher. Yep, keep going.
So the TSX is the TypeScript file, right?
Right, so I'm talking line 32. Let's just write a helper function starting on line 30. Because this is almost like putting it in a separate file. Okay, it's going to make it easier to extract it later. Yeah, so what's it going to do? It's going to sum the tokens at an address. Or for each address, whatever you want to call it. And it's customary for this to be a lowercase, like that leading S. So uppercase letters usually mean like a page component. And now we've got a helper function with the lowercase s. Now this is going to take as a parameter essentially the data, right, from the original query result. But which data really matters here? Or in other words, if you go back to the GraphQL Playground, and yeah, grab that one. And by the way, you see that plus button at the top of the screen? You can have many tabs with a bunch of different queries that you're working on, which is super convenient. Just switch the equal sign to a colon. And I think you have to put fingerprints in quote, fingerprint in quotes. Yeah, there we go. That should be good. Okay. Right. And so what I wanted you to notice here is that, yes, we want the data, but what we really want is just that UTXOs array that's inside. So would it be okay to say that the helper function we're going to write here takes UTXOs as an argument? And then we can use TypeScript here. I jump in a few topics, but it's worth it to start putting these pieces together. And can you go up to the top of the page, your imports? Yep, any would solve the problem will be the fast result, but check this out. Mesh, in addition to coming with all of the helper functions it comes with, it also comes with a bunch of, well, no, let's not import that. Let me take that back for a second. Let's just define our own UTXO data type for just a minute, okay? Because we actually don't want the full mesh functionality right now. but you can open up, or just, yeah, right there. Yeah. Let's create. Just get And you could just make it it doesn't even have to be a whole class. I would replace the word class with type, probably. And then give that U an uppercase. And so there's really only two fields. Well, there's three. Yeah, because we care about the asset fingerprint. We only want to look at those. So we inside these brackets, we can say address colon. And that's going to be a string. And unlike Haskell, that's going to be a lowercase s. Here we are switching back and forth between languages. I don't know how we keep our heads on straight. Okay. Now this doesn't have to match, right? What we're going to do is we're going to take this data and map it to these types. And so, yes, you could have tokens here, but I would recommend having a field called asset or fingerprint and not even worrying about tokens. And then we can map only the data we need to this type. And that could be a string. And then even the quantity, if you check the GraphQL Playground again, is a string, right? So it's tempting to put number there, but the data we're being sent is a string. So we'll keep it like that for now.
But we have to convert it to a number at one point, right? Because we're
That's
going to sum it.
right. That's right. And so we may decide to do that at the moment it's added to the UTXOs we're creating, right? And then we would come back here, we can change the type. And then just throw an equal sign in between UTXOs and the curly bracket on line 30. There we go. Cool. And so now that param, exactly, you can replace it with UTXOs. And it's not just a single UTXO, we actually want an array of these things. So you can put open and close brackets after the S. I forget if that works in TypeScript. Does anybody know TypeScript well enough? I think the way you have to do it is by putting the the square brackets after the type. Yeah, I know that'll work. Okay. Oh, and this is, I'm sorry, this is what we're going to output.
Yeah, so here we want to sum up the tokens we that has the same address, right?
Yeah, and I just realized, sorry, I started thinking too fast right there and didn't. So the type that we have in the arguments, that's going to be the output of this function, but not the input. We're going to take the data in the form it is. So how would you do that? So your instinct was right to match the data results first. Hmm.
Yeah, so the input should be a list, right? This should
Yeah,
be-
it'll, I mean, so the way you set it up first with any is fine, but we are still going to want to use the type that we created here for the results. You see what I
should we-
mean?
yeah, so we go with any for now.
We could say any here.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, and we can replace that later, but that'll get us going. And then what we can do is on line 37, we could have a let result or whatever, let result. And then we can put a colon there. And the type of the result is going to be that array of UTXOs. With the brackets. And then that's going to be equal to this, and this simplifies the work we have to do. That could just be equal to an empty list
Yes.
to start, right? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to filter through the inputs to this function.
So this what we're doing is making a placeholder list called result, right?
Right. And now we're going to do the work of going through whatever's sent to this function, right? This function doesn't know about the GraphQL query. We're going to pass it the results of the query when we use it later. But now we want to map through this list.
So I'm pretty new to JavaScript, so you can see it here.
You're good. And so we can, what really helps as well is going back and forth between here and what the output looks like in the playground. I find that's a really good workflow, right? Because now what we're able to say is, and let's destructure this, okay? So and pause here for just a sec. There's a key point right here. Pause here for just a sec, okay? UTXOs with data type any is the unformatted data that we're going to pass to this query. Right? And what we're going to do is we're going to create nicely formatted data that matches the type that you wrote on line 30. That's going to make it really easy to then, once we do this, to render this data on the page, right? Just addresses and quantities. So here, what we're able to do is the UTXOs we're mapping over are going to be in the format returned by the GraphQL query. And we can do what's called destructuring that. So just keep the double parentheses there. That's what we want, but delete everything inside the blue parentheses for just a sec. Okay. And then what we can do is we can say, okay, UTXO, like you had it before, inside those parentheses. With a lowercase, right? Because again, and this is the subtle point that I'm trying to learn how to be really clear about. Yeah, this is the UTXO that we're talking about right now when we map over this array is in the format that GraphQL gives it to us. What we're trying to do is put it in the format of the type that you wrote on lines 30 to 34. And the purpose of this function is to take it from the GraphQL format and put it in this nice new clean format that you just created a TypeScript type for, while along the way, summing up those UTXOs or the quantities that are at the same address.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so the way to do this, get rid of the S there, because we're saying this is how JavaScript maps work. We have an array called UTXOs, and we're going to map over it. Each item is called a UTXO. And what we're going to do is destructure this thing. So staying on the same line for just a minute, I would keep that second parenthesis up there. Place a colon inside, yeah, and then a open and closing curly bracket. And then let's go back for just a moment to the GraphQL Playground. Well, I guess you could just look up higher on the page too, either way. Right, because this is our schema right here, right? Each UTXO has what? It has an address. It's got a token object, which has asset, fingerprint, and quantity. And honestly, for me, it feels easier to look at the playground because I'm looking at the real data. I still kind of need the help to get to that step. So look at this first object. We're in an array. And stop right there. Yeah, so this from the second line that you have highlighted, just down to the bottom, and then there's that closing curly bracket and the comma below where you're highlighted. That's the structure of each of these objects. So what does that object have inside? It has an address, that's a string. It has tokens, which is an array. And that's it.
And quantity.
Well, quantity is in the array, right? So tokens is an array of objects, each of which has asset and quantity. And then asset is an object that has fingerprint.
Yeah. For a moment, I just saw the quantity outside of the array. So, yeah.
So we can say address, colon, string. That's the easy part. Comma, yeah. Oh, sorry. That's a semicolon there, as if there wasn't enough to pay attention to.
This one.
Yeah. What else? We've got
UTXO.
Oh, I see. Can you tab over lines 24 and 25 just to make it even clearer to read?
425 here.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. And then we've got tokens. And for now, let's just give that an any type for now. And this is something.
Can we do like this?
So here's why we can't, because tokens is actually an array of objects.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the most sustainable thing to do here would be to define another type called tokens. And then for this to be an array of that, but I'll leave that as kind of an exercise for you to take offline if you want to go a little deeper. For now, we could just call it any. Okay. And that's all, right? Because that's all we really have is address and tokens, and that's what we're going to work with. Now, just wrap everything in another set of parentheses, like around the purple. Yeah, great. And then in between those trailing blue and purple parens, equal sign, arrow. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, good. Okay, so now we can work with this inside of those curly brackets. And good. So all the types are checking out. So that's nice. So now for each one of these, think about what we're going to do. There's two cases, right? The address is already a member of result, or it's not yet. And we have to cover both of those possibilities.
So what we want to do here is, if the address is in the results, then do another thing. If it isn't, do another thing, right?
Right, right. The case where the address is not yet in result is easy, right? If address is not a member of result, then just take the address, the fingerprint, and the quantity and push those onto result. So you would say result dot push, and then in parentheses, the thing you're going to push, which would have to be a UTXO as defined on lines 31 through 35.
So how do you do that checking if the address is in the results or not?
Right. So you'll want to, and this is where my JavaScript runs out. I always have to look this up. So JavaScript is element of array. Oh, it's includes. Excellent. So it would be if result dot includes.
It's square bracket, right?
It's going to be round brackets in this case, parentheses. And that word include has an S on the end.
Okay. Of course.
Exactly. And it's all right. And then here's the one it's not going to have address at the top level. So there's one more thing you're getting a type error on line 40, which is great because we want to check that there's an object.
This should be UTXO dot address, right?
Yeah. Well, no, because we already destructured it, so that's not a problem, right? So the reason we used those yellow curly brackets on line 39 is so that we wouldn't have to refer to it as UTXO.address. But so think about what result is. Result is a list of objects that have the format defined on lines 31 through 35. Okay. And so when we look through this list,
So why is result being used there? UTXO dot includes address.
UTXO. Good question. Okay. No, well, the UTXO is the one that we are talking about in the scope of this logic. So of course the UTXO is going to have its own address. That's not what we want to check. What we want to check is that this result we are building up, this list of results that we initialize on line 38, and we're going to start adding to, It's
Yeah,
going to
but-
have a list of objects of this format defined on line 31. And we want to check through those objects to see if one of those objects has an address matching the one that we're about to add.
But why shouldn't you be passing result into utxos.map then?
Good, excellent. So no, and here's why. The result is at the end of this function going to be returned as the output of this function. And you could just set that up now, right? But in between lines 46 and 47, you could just write return result because that's our eventual goal. UTXO is the input array of UTXO objects that were returned by the GraphQL query. And what we are doing is we're processing those raw results that are lowercase UTXOs. And we are formatting them and filtering them and summing quantities as we add them to the result, which is the output of this function.
Does this square bracket have to be here?
It does for TypeScript purposes, right? Because the result is an array of UTXOs. This is, oh shoot, I got another meeting too. Yeah, no, this is really, really helpful as a JavaScript exercise. And I think it's confusing to talk about because of our dual use of UTXOs, if that makes sense, right? So maybe we want to use something else there. But let me just see if I can find.
Isn't it result.address includes?
Result dot address.
Result is the
Yeah.
UTXO array, and we want to compare the addresses of it. I don't know.
Okay, and so what we're going to have is, so result is going to start to have information in it. And that information is going to be a list of objects, each of which looks like this type that we defined on line 31. And the question we're asking here is, hey, out of all of those objects in result, do any of them have a matching address in the address field? By property, here we go. We're not going to use includes. We're going to use find. And here exists an array. If you need the index, if you need to find the index of them, yeah, this is the one we want. Here, all right. I've got a link for you. Oh man, this is my favorite stuff. This is fun to figure this out together. Thank you. JavaScript.
So James, if you could, right, this, I think this also worked, right? The way I'm checking now.
Try it. Yeah, no, this is such a great exercise, and I think I could do a better job at framing the problem that we're working on right here, but this is really a good place to start. Result. Yeah, see if it gives you the result, and then also just check out this doc that I just shared. There's an example about halfway down the page that shows how to search through an array of objects. And that's really what we want to do here. There's an inventory example with a bunch of fruits in it. Yeah, this one right here. This is exactly, this is the structure of what we have, right? The capital U UTXOs array that we're building has the format of that inventory list. And so we're gonna
Yes,
replace the word in. Yeah, exactly. So you would have result.find, which is going through the list as we build it up over time. And then we can have a that separates the function, but we can write an inline function where address is. Okay, so the function that we're checking for we've got just some element. We'll just call it, you can call it I or whatever in place of the word address right there. Just some index. And then an arrow function.
Here, right?
Right there, yeah. And we want to know if I dot address is equal to address. And this returns, I believe, a truthy value. I think it says that there.
Have to be equal to UTXO.address?
Good question. I try that. You could try that if we're getting this error here. Maybe we have to put, yeah, that doesn't make it. Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Good.
You're mapping over each individual UTXO that has an address and a token.
Right, and now we could tell the difference between them. That's great. So if we find that, yeah. And then here, we still have to do one more step now, okay? Because the thing you're going to push, we still have to build it. And it has to have the format defined on line 31. Okay, and so this is then where we're going to create an instance of a UTXO, pulling the address straight from UTXO.address, the fingerprint from tokens.asset.fingerprint, and the quantity from tokens.quantity.
Tokens.quantity.
And so you could use a let here on line 44 and wrap the whole thing in a let, whatever variable equal object.
I can just do it separately, right?
I wouldn't. I would use the UTXO object that you defined on line 31, right? Because that's the thing that we're going to push into this array is an object, a UTXO object. So just
here, let
res or I or whatever, just, some garbage, yeah, equals brackets, just an equal sign in this case. Yeah. Yes, yeah. And then we're going to push that whole thing, I. And this could even be a const, actually. Change the let to a const on line 44. And do a type for I colon uppercase UTXO. Yeah. Now this is going to be UTXO.address, just like Roberto suggested. Yeah. And
Comments. You need comments after.
that's why. Good. Good. Yeah, so the end of line 45 needs a comma.
Okay. All right. Like this.
And what's the error when you mouse over address shorthand?
Should it be colon
Oh,
if
it's-
it's defining?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. Good. Gosh, there's so much to keep track of.
So here, I, right?
Yeah, but something's still wrong.
Oh,
Oh.
it's gone.
No, it likes it now. Good. Yeah, that's the idea. Yep. So now it's just a matter of filling in line 41. In the case where you do find the same address, we don't want to push a new element to the array. We want to just add the tokens to the existing element. But I'm probably in trouble for keeping, oh, they found it in the garage. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm a few minutes late for my 15 minutes late for other meetings. So I got to jump, guys, but this was really fun. And Nelson, thanks for just getting this going about the GraphQL query. And thanks for bravely jumping into JavaScript here. This is awesome.
All right, man. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah. So we've got this recording. We'll post it up there. And anybody else who wants to look at this exercise, we could write this up as just a fun learning task as well. Appreciate it. All right. See you at Playground if you can make it in 1:45. We're just opening up the doors to other folks who are curious and talking credential tokens.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Bye,
See
guys.
ya.